title onto itself for an additional rank 7 access point. The Baby Raccoon cards would also be released here, being Ponpoko, able to summon a level 2 beast from deck face down on normal summon, Tantan, who summons a level 2 beast from deck on flip, and number 64 Ronin Raccoon Sendayu, a beast locked rank 2 that can detach to summon a Kagemusha Raccoon token that matches the attack of the strongest monster on the field on summon, preventing itself from destruction while you control another beast, being a solid budget rogue level deck to play around with. Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand was a rank 8 that could detach on quick effect to make a monster unaffected by other effects that turn, negating its own effects, being a powerful rank 8 option for the pool. Mistake was a continuous trap that locked adding cards from deck to hand outside of drawing, being a solid side deck floodgate for certain matchups. Grisaille Prison, if you controlled a fusion, ritual, or tribute summoned monster, locks players from synchro and exceed summoning until the end of the opponent's next turn, being an extremely powerful floodgate option for certain strategies. Lastly, White Dragon Wyverburster and Black Dragon Collapse Serpent were OCG imports that can summon themselves by banishing the other attribute from grave, searching the other when sent to grave, being decent options for chaos strategies not seeing play now, but would be heavily considered in the future. 2 weeks later would be the second wave of the yearly collectible 10s, bringing secret rare versions of Tempest and Redox to finish out the series, alongside super rare reprints of Thunder Seahorse, Gear Gigantex, number 50 Black Ship of Corn, Diamond Direwolf, and Spellbook of the Master, reprinting some of the more valuable secret rares in the format in a much easier to access rarity and location. YCS Turin would follow a week after this on December 1st, being the final YCS of the year, and once again, Dragon Ruler would dominate thanks to the combination of Ravine and Sixth Sense, though shockingly would not take the event overall this time. That honor would go to Samuel Padigo on Karakuri Geargia, utilizing similar strategies to before, but now having added in the Geargiano monsters with Geargia gear to flood the board and access their rank 4s rapidly, also utilizing a single copy of Redox as an extra body and a monster reborn of sorts. As for other developments here, Influence Dragon would begin to appear in some Dragon Ruler lists, being a level 3 tuner allowing access to Trident Dragion for sudden OTK pushes. Bujin would see a top here sporting Kaiser Coliseum to even the playing field a bit, able to comfortably sit on just Yamato for turns on end thanks to locking swarming from the opponent. Mythic Wood and Water Dragon would make the occasional appearance here in lists to access the rank 8 pool for Dragon Rulers, specifically for Heliopolis, Giant Grinder, and the newly released Felgrand. And with that, 2013 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Would come to an end, seeing a bit of a shocking outcome for those who view these formats as Tier 0, as a very interesting result has come to my attention while researching this period. I've long stood as someone who said that the original Dragon Ruler format was not a Tier 0 format, and looking back on the results now, that is true. Prior to any hits, Dragon Ruler only took 31% of the representation in full, 52.5% when adjusted with the unknown list removed, which is far below the standard 65% threshold most Tier 0 formats are qualified by. However, a very interesting result occurs when you analyze the result of Dragon Ruler's post Sixth Sense release. Of the top 64 spots available in the YCS's following Sixth Sense's release, Dragon Ruler variants took a shocking 65.6% of the representation, 76.4% if you adjust for the unknown lists, which is above the threshold regardless of how you look at it. So interestingly enough, Dragon Ruler did have a Tier 0 format, just not the one everyone claims is the Tier 0 format, which would be quelled going into 2014, but that's a story for another day. As we exited 2013, a Tier 0 menace was raging on. With the last 2 YCSs of the year, we saw Dragon Rulers absolutely take over for a second time that year, with the main culprit this time being that of Sixth Sense, which allowed you to completely set up off its activation regardless of the roll's result. With such an oppressive card causing a Tier 0 reign for Dragon Rulers right at the end of the year, a ban list would be put in place on January 1st, 2014, and knowing that, the hit shouldn't be surprising. Newly banned were Dragon Ravine, Return from the Different Dimension, and Sixth Sense, all hits at Dragon Ruler, as well as Self-Destruct Button, a card that simply had caused too many headaches for tournament play to remain legal. Newly limited were all 4 Dragon Rulers, Debris Dragon, and Sacred Sword of 7 Stars, as hits to Dragon Ruler, Divine Wind of the Mist Valley in response to a couple of FTK brews that were popping up using Harpy Dancer, Final Countdown as a hit to the popular Stall deck, Spellbook of Fate is a hit to Spellbook's remaining best card, and Magician of Faith returning from the banned section to 1 copy. Newly semi-limited were Chaos Sorcerer and Lone Fire Blossom, both coming back from limited. Lastly, newly unlimited were Archlord Christia, Constellar Ptolemy M7, Mizuki, Plague Spreader Zombie, TG Striker, Tour Guide from the Underworld, and Fire Formation Tenki, being a wave of cleanup from when the OCG and TCG lists were linked. Overall, this ban list did one thing major, which was killing the Tier 0 version of Dragon Rulers, knocking out a majority of the heavy hitters from the deck as well as cracking down on some of the more toxic cards for events like Countdown and Self-Destruct Button. In addition to this, the Zexal Mangas Volume 4 would release a week later, bringing number 47 Nightmare Shark, a direct attacking rank 3 option that would see niche play for now, but became a lot more relevant later in the year as a game closer. As the first event of the year, YCS Sydney would take place on January 19th, and would ring in the year with no Dragon Ruler decks appearing in the top cut known lists, a first from the previous half a year. The field here had devolved a bit back to the tendencies of the pre-Dragon Ruler era, with Fire Fist being the standout deck of the event, although notably when I say Fire Fist, I primarily mean a Beast Warrior control pile with Fire Fist Bear at the center, so take that with a grain of salt. Anders Co. would take the event on Teleport Karakuri, being a surprise run for the deck to take in the newly weakened metagame, but the meta would soon solidify around its big threats in Fire Fist and Mermail once again as it had in pre-Tachyon formats. This led us into the first core set of the year, and with the meta in a newly reset position, any new strategy with enough support could easily take the spot of the new top deck. Legacy of the Valiant. Release date, January 24th, 2014. Set type, core set. Major strategies, Sylvan, Ghost Trick, Bujin. Impact, a clear push, but not a breakthrough. Legacy of the Valiant would be the first core set of the year, and with it would come both a new archetype as well as a wave of support for 2 archetypes from the tail end of 2013 to try and change something about their position in the metagame. The new archetype was Sylvan, a series of plant monsters that also brought with them a new keyword to the game in the form of Excavate, in which you reveal a set number of cards from the top of your deck to do an effect. Many previous cards that did this, such as Pot of Duality, would also be errataed in the coming months to reflect this change. As for Sylvans, each of the main deck monsters had 2 effects, one that lets you excavate a certain number of cards and send plants you find to the graveyard, putting the rest back on bottom of the deck, and the other triggering when excavated and sent to grave. These included Peacekeeper, who could excavate 1 on summon and revive a level 4 lower plant if excavated, Kumashurmo, who excavated up to 5 on being flipped and pops a spell trap when excavated, Martial Leaf, who excavates up to 2 on normal and pops a monster if excavated, Hermitry, who can excavate 1 once per turn and can rearrange the top 3 of your deck when excavated, Alsay, a rank 8 that can declare a card name once per turn to excavate and either add it to hand if called correctly or send it to the grave if not, and can detach 1 when a card is sent from deck to grave by card effect to put a card on field on either the top or bottom of the deck, and their field spell Mount Sylvania, which can send a plant from hand or field to grave to stack a Sylvan card from deck on top of the deck, and during the opponent's end phase, can excavate 1 like the Sylvan monster effects. This archetype had a lot of good bones to it, but the issue primarily lied in that all of their consistent lines required access to Hermitry, who was level 8. This could be offset slightly thanks to the recent semi-limit of Lone Fire Blossom, but general plant support could only take the strategy so far for now. Ghost Trick would receive a new wave of support here in Jack Frost, who can summon itself when the opponent attacks you directly, flipping the attacking monster face down, Mary, who can be discarded when you take damage to summon a Ghost Trick from deck face down, Dullahan, a rank 1 that gains attack for each Ghost Trick you control and can detach 1 on either player's turn to have a monster's attack that turn, able to cycle a Ghost Trick when sent to grave, and Museum, a field spell that prevents set monsters from being attacked, lets monsters attack directly if all opposing monsters are set, and flips any monster that deals battle damage face down. Ghost Trick would continue to see no standalone success, but this wave would bring enough useful stall pieces to the archetype that it would see some consideration as a splash engine into other decks that needed more stall and swarm tools, like Monarch. Bujin would receive another wave here in Arasuda, a Beast Warrior Bujin that can summon itself when a Bujin is banished from field or grave, and can draw 1 and discard 1 if a Bujin was added from deck to hand that turn. Peacock, who can send itself from hand to grave in main phase 2 to search a Bujin. Hare, who can banish itself from grave on either player's turn to protect the Bujin from destruction once that turn, and Tsukiyomi, a light locked rank 4 that can detach 1 to send your hand to the grave to draw 2 cards, and can summon Beast Warrior Bujins from grave up to the number of materials it had when removed by the opponent's card effect. Bujin, already being in a decent position following the January 1st ban list, would take the support and run with it to be a solid potential strategy in the upcoming metagame, and this support did a lot to reinforce that. Moving into notable standouts, Kalantosa would be a very notable inclusion for the level 2 Earth Beast strategy, able to pop a card on field when summoned by a beast effect. This would also be complemented by Obedience Schooled, able to summon 3 level 2 or lower beasts from deck with their effects negated, being an excellent starter for that strategy too. Tackle Crusader could, when sent to grave, flip a monster face down or bounce a spell trap the opponent controls to hand, being a solid piece in rock decks moving forward. In the same vein, Gorgonic Guardian is a rock-locked rank 3 that can, on either player's turn, detach to drop an opponent's monster's attack to 0 and negate its effects that turn. Also able to, on your turn only, destroy a monster with 0 attack. While incredibly powerful, the rank 3 rock restriction was just a bit too much at the time for the card to see play, but it would see rogue level experimentation in later 2016 with another archetype getting legacy support. The generic extra deck pool itself would see a bunch of new additions here that would shape the meta moving forward, such as number 101 Silent Honor Arc, a generic rank 4 that can detach 2 materials to suck up an opponent's special summoned attack position monster as material, bringing one of the best removal tools to the rank 4 pool. I say one of because released alongside Arc was Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, a generic rank 4 that could, once per chain in your main phase or the opponent's battle phase, if the total number of cards your opponent has on field and in hand is more than you, nuke the field except for itself, being one of the best rank 4s due to either being a setup breaker or providing a layer of protection going into the opponent's turn, demanding a removal prior to the battle phase. Lastly, for the Exceed pool would be Downward Magician, a spellcaster locked rank 4 that could also be overlaid onto any rank 3 in the main phase too, giving 200 for each material and dealing piercing damage, being a solid option for rank 3 decks to convert their used Exceed monsters. In addition to the Exceed pool additions, the generic Synchro pool would also receive Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree, a level 10 Synchro that cannot be targeted by card effects except in your main phase too, becoming the premier level 10 generic Synchro overnight. Rank Up Magic Astral Force is a spell that can target an Exceed to overlay another Exceed onto that is the same type and attribute but 2 ranks higher, and can be added from grave to hand instead of conducting your normal draw for turn. Not seeing any play now, but would find an incredibly interesting niche in the coming months. Shared Ride lets you draw a card every time the opponent adds a card from deck or grave to hand except by drawing, being a searcher equivalent to Max C, seeing side deck play in certain formats where searchers are extremely heavily played. Lastly, Skill Prisoner can target a monster you control to negate any monster effect that targets it that turn, able to be banished from grave to do it again, seeing niche use against certain strategies. YCS Atlanta would be held a week later on February 2nd, and this event would be the first of many this year that would be what we're going to refer to as half-sealed events. For context, this year specifically, we'd see almost every YCS that took place in North America run a standard constructed event until top 16, at which point all players would swap to doing a draft event using whatever the current battle pack was, being War of the Giants for this event. This meant that the top 32 would still be indicative of what decks were performing the best in the meta, but it doesn't mean that the deck that won the event would be the best deck of the event, rather what the winner used to reach top 16. With all of that preamble out of the way, Fire Fist, or more specifically the Bear deck as Konami's official coverage refers to it, would continue to take the lion's share of the top cut, even being piloted by Christian Jorge, who would take first place here after the top 16 draft. Geargia was the other very notable standout here, rising into a dominant position with the discovery of Geargia gear being able to swarm with the Geargiano pieces, standardly being mixed in with Karakuri tuners for synchro access. Hieratic would crack into the top cut with multiple showings here, though notably was the Hieratic Ruler variant in all cases. The Dragon Rulers had found their next core to latch onto and ride into meta viability, though this time was notably less powerful due to only having one of each ruler at their disposal, relying more heavily on the Hieratic side of the deck to do the heavy lifting and swarming. This would lead into the year's first structure deck a week later, which would itself set the trend that this year of structure decks is going to be exclusively focused on bringing new support to previously introduced archetypes, starting with a GX era staple. Cyber Dragon Revolution. Release date, February 7th, 2014. Set type, Structure Deck. Major strategies, Cyber Dragon. Impact, a couple of specifically useful cards. Cyber Dragon Revolution was the first of 3 structure decks this year aimed at taking a meta strategy, or in this case a singular card, and making a full modern strategy out of it. In the case of Cyber Dragon, the idea was to make swarming with them far easier to enable Exceed plays. Their new cards here included Core, who's considered Sidra on field and engrave, searched a Cyber spell trap on normal, and could, if your opponent controls a monster and you don't, banish itself from grave to summon a Cyber Dragon monster from the deck. Dry, who's considered Sidra on field and engrave, level modulates all Sidras to 5 on normal, and if banished, protects the Sidra from being destroyed that turn. Nova, a rank 5 machine-locked Exceed that could detach to summon a Sidra from grave, can banish a Sidra from hand or field to boost itself by 2100 that turn, and floats into a machine fusion on effect destruction by the opponent, and Repair Plant, which can use one effect if you have a Sidra in grave or both if you have 3 or more, being to search a light machine or shuffle back a light machine into deck from grave. While this didn't turn Cyber Dragon into its own viable standalone strategy for the meta, it did do a couple of interesting things. The first was Core, as by being a Cyber Dragon that you could normal summon and ducks under Bottomless, it became a side deck option to use against machine decks to make Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon without risking tripping back row. The second was Nova, as while it wouldn't be played at all for the time being, Nova was one of those cards that would be broken wide open in early 2016 for reasons out of its control, but we'll get to those soon enough. Reprints here included Sidra, Cyber Valley, Super Poly, MST, Trapstun, and D-Prison to name a few. YCS Berlin would be held 2 weeks later, and from the results here, the Bear deck and Mermail would split the main portion of the representation, with Alpay Engine taking first place using a trap-heavy Reckless Greed build of Mermail. YCS Sao Paulo would be held 2 weeks later, and while this event was also a half-draft event, the draft would be everything before Top 16, so the decks listed here did not necessarily earn a spot in the top cut by the deck's merits, so take the top cut here with a grain of salt. Carlos Araujo would take the event on Harpy, able to take down 4 rounds in a row in the slimmed down matchup spread. YCS Chicago would be 2 weeks after this, and it was back to using Sealed to play out from top 16, so the top 32 decks here did earn their top spots themselves. Geargia took a sizable portion of the top cut here, once again rivaling the Bear deck and Mermail, with Bujin once again close behind the pack. Tom Mock would take the event, using Bujin to claim his top 16 position before the draft, moving the deck away from its stun roots to a more Exceed-focused strategy with Bujin Carnation covering its board flooding. This event would be directly before the year's Gold Series, and while the past few years had hit a solid groove with the sets, this year's would be different to say the least. Premium Gold. Release date, March 28th, 2014. Set type, reprint set. Major strategies, the meta of the past year, OCG imports, all previous Gold Series. Impact, a new take on the Gold Series formula. Premium Gold would be the first full shakeup of the Gold Series formula, not by introducing new rarities, although it did introduce the new Gold Secret Rare, but also by importing OCG cards in the set in addition to the reprints it normally provided, which included a block of 10 cards from each of the previous Gold Series and 21 new to Gold Rare cards. While most of these imports held no impact, there were a couple in particular that were notably impactful, specifically in Beals of the Diabolic Dragon, a Dark Tuner-locked level 8 synchro that can't be destroyed in battle and gains attack equal to any damage you take, being a solid inclusion for any dark deck that can make it. In addition to this, Ancient Pixie Dragon would be the manga counterpart to Ancient Fairy Dragon, drawing 1 after activating a field spell and can pop a monster on field if a field spell is active. Lastly for the imports would be the Gimmick Puppet monsters, which we've seen some of previously, but here we would finally receive Dreary Doll, who can special summon herself from grave by banishing another Gimmick Puppet from grave. Magnet Doll, able to special summon itself from hand if your opponent has more monsters than you and you only control Gimmick Puppets. And Junk Puppet, an archetypal revival spell, which gave Gimmick Puppets the material to actually consistently summon their rank 8s, though would still be notably weak in the meta. Reprints here included Lonefire, Honest, Veiler, Light Pulsar, Dark Flare, Eclipse Wyvern, Fire Fist Tiger King, Solar Recharge, Forbidden Chalice, Forbidden Lance, Tenki, Rhoda, Mirror Force, Torrential, Dad, Caius, Goldsark, Mindcon, Bottomless, Judgment Dragon, Mizuki, Plague Spreader, Ryo, Stardust, Armor Master, Armed Wing, Icarus Attack, Morphing Jar, BLS, Chaos Sorcerer, Raikou, Celestia, and Summoner Monk. In addition to this, a new ban list would drop 3 days later on April 1st, attempting to shake up the meta manually, as the past few sets seem to have done nothing to change what decks were good. Newly banned were Morphing Jar 1 and 2, which was directly targeted at Empty Jar, a rogue-level annoyance that never seemed to crack the YCS circuit in recent months, though notably this ban came directly following Morphing Jar's reprint in Premium Gold. Newly limited were Wolfbark, a hit to the Bear deck, Abyssgund, a hit to Mermail, Rekindling, a hit towards fire decks in general, but more so targeted at Fire King, and Infernity Barrier, a hit to Infernity. Newly semi'd were Seal of Convocation, a hit to Dragon Ruler's current best build, and Necroface, returning from 1. Lastly, unlimited were Magical Stone Excavation and Primal Seed, 2 points of cleanup. Overall, these hits were effectively slaps on the wrist for most of the top performing decks in the meta, though notably lacked any hits towards Geargia, which was about as old, if not older, than the other decks getting hit. YCS Mexico City would be the testing grounds following the new list, being another sealed top 16, and notably the top 32 for the most part remained unchanged, with the same 4 decks taking the majority of representation yet again. Alejandro Suarez would take the event through the sealed draft, using Mythic Rulers to pilot himself into the top 16, seeing another Dragon Ruler variant that could still compete following the January list, though he did not make his list public. YCS Vegas would be a week later, using the same draft format that would be standard for all draft events for the remainder of the year, and following the success of Mythic Rulers in Mexico City, the deck would rise a bit into the 3rd place representation slot. Geargia and Mermail would continue to take those lion's shares of the top cut, but notably, Firefist would see a rapid decline in its top cut performance following the limit of Wolfbark, which in turn limited the amount of recursive rank 4s the deck could make. Denny Yu would be crowned the winner following the sealed draft, making it the top 16 using Hieratic Ruler, being another example of the ruler strategy's relevance still remaining in whispers in the meta. This would lead to a new import set series premiering 2 weeks later, and though for the most part the OCG import sets up until now have been mostly unimpactful, this one was going to completely upend the balance of the meta as we knew it by introducing multiple meta warping threats. Dragons of Legend. Release date, April 25th, 2014. Set type, import set. Major strategies, Timaeus, Hands. Impact, the beginnings of a beloved format. Dragons of Legend would be the first set in a long line of OCG import sets themed to the legendary dragons from the Season 4 filler arc of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. As such, the primary card featured for this set would be the Eye of Timaeus, a spell that lets you fuse a Dark Magician monster into a fusion that lists it as material using only that monster, able to access the classic Dark Paladin and Dark Flare Knight, but also the new targets of Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight, a fusion of DMG and a dragon, able to discard to pop a face-up card once per turn in either player's turn, and Amulet Dragon, a fusion of Dark Magician and a dragon that can banish any number of spells from grave on summon to boost its attack by 100 for each, floating into a spellcaster engrave on destruction. These were clearly trying to push a Dark Magician deck, but were far too little to get anything off the ground for that to be meta-relevant. However, these were not the imports that had people talking, as there were 6 more imports in this set that would all hold meta-relevance over the coming months. The first of these would be Curry Bandit, which in the end phase of the turn its normal summon contribute itself to Excavate 5, add a spell trap from those to hand, and put the rest in the grave, being an insane starter for the theorized Sylvan deck, but also holding power as a heavy mill tool. The next would be Mathematician, who on normal summon could bend any level 4 or lower monster from deck to grave, drawing a card if destroyed by battle, being effectively a better version of Armageddon Knight for various strategies that also drew a card after, like Card Trooper, seeing play for these reasons. Next up was Wiretap, a counter trap that negates a trap and shuffles it back into deck for no cost, being solid as most counter traps that did something similar required a cost of some kind. The last 3, however, would be the most impactful of all. Fire and Ice Hand were a duo of cards that, on destruction, pop a monster in Fire Hand's case or a spell trap in Ice Hands, and if you do, floats into a copy of the other. These 2 would be a powerful control engine of sorts that would be splashed into almost everything over the coming months, representing 6 total pops if they go uncountered. Lastly, Soul Charge was a spell that could, for the cost of 1,000 life points a monster and your battle phase that turn, summon as many monsters as you'd like from the graveyard. Needless to say, Amass Monster Reborn was incredibly powerful, and on top of that, it was available at 3 copies on release, meaning that every deck could have access to a mass board revival for the cost of simple life points, which at this stage were becoming more and more of an expendable resource. YCS Paris would be held the same weekend, though a major point of note here needs to be that due to a logistical issue, Dragons of Legend would not be legal for the main event of this particular YCS. Peter Gross would take the event on Mermail, being his 3rd YCS win after his 2 wins in 2012. The new cards of Dragons of Legend would have to wait just a bit longer to rock the meta, but they would have to share the stage with the next core set released 3 weeks later. Primal Origin. Release date, May 17th, 2014. Set type, core set. Major strategies, artifact, Sylvan, Bujin. Impact, ending the Zexal era with a tip of the hat. Primal Origin would be the final core set of the Zexal era, and if it wanted to end the era with a bang, it absolutely accomplished that in spades, introducing a new meta archetype in addition to providing support waves to multiple other archetypes both in the meta and just outside of it, completely shaking things up prior to the WCQ circuit taking place over the next few months. The new archetype here was Artifact, a series of monsters that could be set in the spell trap zone, summoning themselves if popped on the opponent's turn while set there, including Moral Talk, who pops a face-up opponent's card when summoned on the opponent's turn, Beagle Talk, who pops up to 2 of your set cards if summoned on the opponent's turn, Scythe, a TCG exclusive that locks an opponent's extra deck summons if summoned on the opponent's turn, Durendal, a rank 5 that can detach a material to change an opponent's activated monster or normal spell trap effect to destroy a spell trap the opponent controls, and can detach one to mulligan both players' hands in either turn, with both effects being tied to the same once per turn restriction. Ignition, a quick play spell that pops a spell trap on the field, then sets an artifact monster from deck to the spell trap zone, able to skip the opponent's next battle phase if popped while set, and Sanctum, a trap that summons an artifact from deck, triggering their summon effect if it's the opponent's turn, and pops a card on field if destroyed while set. Artifacts were a solid engine of removal pieces, specifically in the case of Moral Talk with Sanctum, being considered as a splash engine for various decks in the meta to buff up their removal options. Sylvan would receive a solid second wave of support here in Cherub Sprout, able to excavate up to 2 on special summon, and able to special summon a level 1 plant from deck if excavated, Sage Koya, able to be special summoned from hand if a Sylvan is sent to grave except in the damage step, can excavate 1 once per turn, and can recur a Sylvan spell trap if excavated, Princess Sprout, a TCG exclusive that can tribute herself to excavate 1, send it to grave regardless of the results, and place a Sprout monster in grave on top of the deck, and if excavated, special summons herself with any level between 1 and 8, Aurea, a rank 7 that can send a plant from hand or field to grave to reorder cards on top of the deck equal to the level of the sent monster, and can detach 1 to excavate up to 3 cards, send any plants to grave, and bounce that many cards on field to hand, and Charity, a spell that lets you draw 3 then stack 2, including a Sylvan, from hand on top of the deck, stacking every card in hand if you don't have a Sylvan. This wave would iron out a ton of the issues that Sylvan had from its initial debut, with Sage and Princess specifically filling a major void in the excavation access and Charity reading almost like a custom card for the archetype. But whether or not it would perform would have to be seen in the YCS and WCQ circuit. Bujin would receive a couple of new cards here in Harume, a Beast Warrior Bujin that must be special summoned by banishing a Bujin from grave except itself, and rips a card from both players' hand on destruction, Sinew, a TCG exclusive that can banish itself from grave to boost a Bujin by the attack of the battling monster, having battle damage from that battle, and Amaterasu, a 3-material rank 4 that can detach 1 to either summon a banished level 4 lower on your turn, or add a banished level 4 lower to hand on the opponent's turn. The support would be solid for Bujin all around, giving the deck an in-archetype honest of sorts as well as more rank 4 swarming options, seeing a boost in the deck's play rate from this support. Moving into the standalones, Traptrix would receive Dionea, with the standard Traptrix immunity, special summons a Traptrix from grave on normal, and sets a whole normal trap from grave on special, being an incredibly powerful piece to pair with a previously released Myrmelio for a splash engine. Madolche would receive Angeli, with the standard Madolche reshuffle effect, and contribute herself to summon a Madolche from deck, shuffling it back into the deck at the end phase of your next turn, which was an incredible starter for Madolche by giving the deck immediate access to Hootcake, who already had a monster engraved to banish thanks to Angeli's tribute not triggering the shuffle back effect. Majesty's Fiend was a counterpart to the previously released Vanity's Fiend, locking monster effects while on the field, being a solid counter strategy to various decks in many different metagames. Number 103 Ragna Zero was the new rank 4 option, able to detach to pop a monster who has a different attack than its original, drawing a card if you do, being a solid tech choice for countering out some decks. Number 80 Rhapsody and Berserk was another rank 4 option, able to detach 1 to banish a card in the opponent's grave, and can equip itself onto another Exceed to boost that monster by 1200 attack, being considered as another tech choice for the banish effect primarily. Karen Gorgon was yet another new rank 4 option, able to detach 1 to change any card's singular target to itself if able, being primarily played as one of the strongest rank 4 bodies on 2450 that still had a decent effect attached. Exceed's Universe is a trap that sends 2 Exceeds to grave to summon a non-number Exceed with a rank that is equal to the combined ranks of the sent Exceeds or 1 less, attaching itself as material to that monster, being mostly niche in its applications, but did give rank 4 focus decks the ability to access the rank 7 and 8 pool in a roundabout way. Evo Singularity was a new trap for the Evol archetype, able to summon an Evil Tsar from the extra deck and attach an Evo Tile and Evil Tsar from grave to it as material, being a powerful cheat-out option for the floundering strategy. Lastly, and the ban played on, was a continuous trap that locks summoning of monsters with the same level or rank as monsters you already controlled, being a solid floodgate option against various Exceed strategies. YCS Philadelphia would be the same weekend, being another top 16 sealed event, and though Geargia would continue to dominate the space, a very clear change was present from the top 32. The engines present in the past couple of packs would pop up in various strategies throughout the top 32, but most notably would be mixed with each other to form their own standalone decks, like Traptrix Hands, Artifact Traptrix, and what would become the face of the format in retrospect, HAT, short for Hand Artifact Traptrix, which would mix the titular engines together to form a tight control package, with the hands providing their monster and spell trap pops in combination with board swarming, the artifacts providing disruption and rank 5 access through Moral and Beagle Talk, and Traptrix providing access to Bottomless and Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, while also providing spell trap removal and rank 4 access. This deck would become the face of this period of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, known as HAT format, which would be considered one of the few times in post-5D's Yu-Gi-Oh! Where a deck that is very much a control strategy would be the dominant force on the metagame. Chris LeBlanc would win the event following the top 16 draft, using Madolche to reach top 16, sporting not only the new Angeli line, but also Fire and Ice Hand to help clean up board states, marking the player's second YCS victory following Providence in 2012. This would lead into the next structure deck over a month later, and with most players using the results from the YCS to prepare for the upcoming WCQ circuit, this structure deck would be the last opportunity to provide any kind of shakeup to the already shattered apart metagame. Realm of Light. Release date, June 27th, 2014. Set type, structure deck. Major strategies, Lightsworn. Impact, a revitalization to Millers. Realm of Light would be the second of 3 structure decks aimed at providing new support to previously meta archetypes, this time being Lightsworn, who will receive 3 new monsters to bolster their ranks, being Raiden, a tuner that's able to mill 2 to boost himself by 200 for each Lightsworn milled this way, milling 2 more in the end phase. Minerva, a tuner who searches a light dragon on normal whose level is less than or equal to your Lightsworn names in grave, milling 2 in the end phase, and mills 1 when sent from hand or deck to grave. And Michael, a level 7 light lock synchro that can pay 1,000 to banish a card on field, shuffles back any number of Lightsworns in grave on destruction, gaining 300 life points for each, and mills 3 in the end phase. These 3 would each see their own usage both within Lightsworn strategies and in general, with Raiden specifically seeing the most usage due to being a miller that is also a tuner for Synchro Pool access, making him extremely useful for various strategies. Reprints here included JD, Celestia, Jane, Lila, Gareth, Wolf, Aaron, Lumina, Arcus, Raiko, Honest, Blackwing Zephyros, Necrogardna, Solar Recharge, Charge, Foolish, and Breakthrough Skill. The WCQ circuit for the year would begin with the European WCQ on June 29th, and for the most part we'd see similar results to Philadelphia, with Geargia remaining the top deck and HAT remaining in the top 3. There were a couple of other decks, however, in the top cut worth talking about. Sylvan would see its first set of premier event tops, seeing 3 total, with Sage Koya ironing out many of the archetype's boss monster issues and Sylvan Charge being one of the best enablers the deck could have asked for, utilizing all of the archetype's power cards in addition to plant staples like Lonefire Blossom and Rose Archer, as well as the mass excavation and dump tool that was Curry Bandit, fitting extremely nicely into the archetype. The other breakout success here would be Lightsworn Ruler, tying HAT for representation and utilizing the newly released Lightsworn structure deck with Raiden and Minerva in tow, similarly utilizing Curry Bandit for the massive mills he provided. Eugen Height would take the event on Mermail, showing the deck can still perform in the metagame despite the heavily shifting landscape around it. The South American WCQ would be the same weekend, and HAT would see a far more pronounced performance here, taking a fourth of the representation at 8 slots from the top 32. Roger Moran would take the event on Machina Gacha.
The future of fast is here with Frontier Fiber. Unlock the power of Wi-Fi 7, the best.
That's not. It's war. Battle for the islands. 40 warships ready. Paris are called up. Prince Andy to go. Special crisis issue of the Sun. Saboteurs hit Ain Tree. Arson attacks Rex Fence.
This is so bad
Isn't this
after
funny?
beer.
All the fucking British motherfuckers who always
The Vanderkoys control the city.
at Americans
They
calling it
killed my
soccer.
family.
This is the damn sun
Today's gonna be a good day.
calling it soccer. Because that's where it came from. It came from British. Came from British world. From Association Soccer. Ain't this the Big Ben? Look, call me crazy. I'm just gonna go London in front of the Big Ben. The London Tower. Sometime they had a war. Wait, is the Tower of London different from the Big Ben? Fuck. Tesco's. We've got a fucking Tesco's. Oh, you think I'm a nonce? Okay, that's enough of that. Here's my impression of a British guy who people thinks is it's a nonce. Okay, wait. Okay, what year? 40 warships ready. Paris are called up. Prince Andy to go. It's Prince Andrew, right? Battle for the islands. I don't know what fucking islands they had a battle for. Lovely legs. It's so creepy. Lovely legs. All right. The Grand National Sun. Y'all got a fucking date on this bitch? I think it says. Oh, God. My eyes aren't doing well. 4-page. 19 April 5th, 19 something 2. April 5th, 1962. Boy, would I hate to be wrong. 1972? 1992? God, it could be fucking whenever. I'll just go 1962. 1982. Fuck my fucking eyeballs. Fuck my fucking eyeballs, man. Fuck my fucking bad fucking eyes. Hotel de Lion d'Or. Hotel of the Gold Lion. Ombre à la semaine au moins. Y gaz à tout l'étage. There's gas on every floor. That's huge. This is some historic hotel in France. In a very touristy part. What are you rocking there, bro? We have a mime who took a day off. I mean, bro, this could be Lightning McQueen. So it has to be after 2006. Honestly, it looks really HD. I'm gonna go like 2000 fucking 22. We're in France. I don't know where though. It doesn't seem like it's Paris. It seems more coastal. I'm gonna go like this is dumb. I'm gonna go like Monaco. It was 2011 at Puy de Fou Historic Theme Park. Fuck. Okay. King size filtered cigarettes, full rich tobacco. Taxi. Huh. Hong Kong? Kowloon, 1972? Perhaps? Hong Kong, 1979. 1986, it was Hong Kong. Okay. Not bad. Magasin
seconds remaining. 10 seconds remaining. 5 seconds remaining. DC. Can we pause?
Like the past, I'm never dead. I'm not even past. This must be
Who could turn away from this battle?
like those odds, do you?
are fortified.
I'm under attack. You surprise me. Choices.
structures have been snow fortified. Your top tower is under attack.
That is one possible course.
There's no more top tower. I thought this might happen. Your middle tower is under attack.
It was all about deceiving.
Your middle tower is gone. I tried to warn you.
Say I never gave you anything.
fortified their structures. Don't let your middle tower fall. Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower is gone. I tried to warn you. Hey, they're attacking your bottom barracks. Your bottom barracks have fallen. Who's gonna clean that up?